Today we have a great game between Bobby Fischer and Arthur Bisguier from the 1957 U.S. Chess Championships. And watch what Bisguier does. He tries to trick Fischer. Will Fischer fall for it? Fischer has white, Bisguier has black. E4, E6. The French defense is on the board. D4, D5, and the main line is played by Bobby Fischer. Knight to C3. Arthur Bisguier plays bishop to B4, the winnower variation. Now, in this variation, black is willing to give up his very valuable dark squared bishop to cause pawn structure damage to the white position. Fischer gains space with E5, the main move, and B6 is played by Arthur Bisguier. Now, many of us know that in the French defense, this Queen's bishop at c8 is the bad bishop. It's blocked in by the e6 and d5 pawns. So by playing b6, what Grandmaster Bisguier wants to do is play the bishop to a6 and trade it off for white's good bishop. That's his first strategic idea. Fischer just goes ahead and kicks that bishop at b4 and says, "Are you going to take my knight or not?" And he does. He goes ahead and damages the structure, but again, gives up a good minor piece in order to do it. Pawn takes. Now, queen to d7. This move looks a little strange. It, for the moment, does keep some control over b5, but there is a reason why black wants this queen at d7, which we'll find out right now. White plays queen to g4, Bobby Fischer attacking this pawn at g7, but now because the queen is here on d7, Bobby Fischer is able to deal with this move, or Bisguier is. He plays f5. That's the idea. So this queen laterally defends the g7 pawn, and you don't want to take en passant on f6. Black gets good play here. So what Fischer does instead, he plays the queen to g3. That keeps pressure on the g7 pawn, and he can have some nice attacking potential on the king's side. Black plays bishop to a6, and Fischer goes ahead and takes that bishop. The reason is, with the knight on a6, it's somewhat out of play and it's going to take some time to reroute back into the position. So white's the one that went ahead and took the bishop on a6. Knight to e2. Fischer aims at this nice f4 square where the knight will keep pressure on e6. And now long castling from black. This is sort of the second idea in the winnower after damaging the pawn structure, is that black will castle queenside and then use his kingside pawns and open lines of attack to attack attack white on the king side. So a4 is the first move that is played because white has to find a way to open up lines of attack against black's king, which is not always that easy. So he's threatening to play a5 and open up the a file. King to b7. The idea is the king at b7 can support a rook at a8 and challenge that a file a little bit. White castle short. Now queen to f7. That allows him to stay in contact with the g7 pawn while developing the knight to e7. It also could potentially support an f5, f4 push. But white has to find a way to get in at that black king, so Fischer finds a creative solution, a temporary pawn sacrifice. He plays c4. He wants to put pressure on these light squares, maybe even open up this diagonal. Knight to e7. Black tries to maintain a strong point at d5 with the knight. But now bishop to g5 just pins the knight to the rook, making it very hard to do so. Pawn takes, and here queen to c3, getting to take that c pawn back. Black plays knight to d5, attacks the queen. Queen takes c4, and obviously this rook is under attack from the bishop at g5. So the rook moves to a8, knowing that this a file could open up. Rook to a8 to help deal with that on the a file. The bishop comes back to d2, helping to control b4 and also further supporting the a5 push. f4 from Grandmaster Bisguier. He would love to play f3 and sort of wreck Fischer's kingside pawn structure. Fischer plays rook to a3 to keep this square under control. So if the pawn advances, he could just take with the rook. But now g5. Black has a singular focus. He wants to attack white's king while at the same time, said singular, he also wants to defend his own king on the queen side. Fischer pushes ahead with a5, the threat to take, and then play rook f to a1. and there could be some serious threats. This knight would be attacked 3 times by both rooks and the queen. Black goes ahead and plays c6, ab6, ab6, and queen to b3 is played. If he plays an immediate rook f to a1, then after knight a to c7, white is still better, but black is a little tighter position and may be able to hold here. But Fischer with queen to b3 is threatening to play c4 and unsettle this well-placed knight on d5. The knight does go to c7, but now c4, hitting that knight. Black trades rooks, queen a3, rook to a8, gaining a tempo against the queen before he moves the knight. Queen to b3, and knight to e7. So, a couple of things to remember here. The main target, the focal point, if you've ever read the book Art of Attack by Vukovic, talks about focal points of attack. On the queen side for Fischer is going to be b6. This is the most vulnerable square, pawn, whatever, in front of black's king. The other thing to take note of is there is a strategic vulnerability in black's position, namely this d6 square. Wouldn't it be nice to have a knight sitting on that square? It would be crushing. Well, Fischer's next move, knight to c3, intending to do exactly that. Play the knight to e4 and then to d6. So queen to f5 to keep the knight out of the e4 square. And here Fischer could have played knight to a4, piling on, trying to pressure this b6 pawn. That might have been best after a rook to a6, knight to c5 check, forks, because there's a pin on the pawn. And after knight c8, bishop to b4, getting the bishop into the action, will be pretty tough for black to deal with. But Fischer first plays queen to b4. That does gain a tempo against the knight at e7. But the knight at c8 is a little better defender anyway. It controls d6 and adds a defender to b6. Knight to a4. f3 from black. Now, so it's not, there's some danger here. Move like, queen to g4, queen to g2 mate could be a potential issue. Fischer plays knight to c5 check, king to b8, knight to d7 check, king to b7. Now queen to b3 to help defend the king side a bit. Queen to g4 from black. Obviously, there's an immediate threat of mate. Fischer's not going to allow that. But first he plays knight to c5 check. Again, there's a pin on this pawn, so he can't take the knight. The knight goes, the king goes to b8. And now g3 is played. And if black plays queen to h3, there is no mate here because Fischer first he can check and then just take that pawn at f3. And so there is no mate. That's why I moved the queen back to b3 in the first place. But black can take on d4, which he does. But now bishop to e3. So in many ways, this actually helps Fischer because it adds another piece to put pressure on the b6 pawn and square. Now you have the bishop from e3 aiming right at it. The queen goes to a1, a sneaky move. The queen can obviously not be taken because after rook takes queen, rook takes rook, there's going to be a back rank mate. White can block it a couple times, it's going to be mate. So he can't take the queen, but rook to b1, staying focused on this vulnerable b6 square. Now rook to a3 from Bisguier, getting pretty tricky. Knight to d7 check, king to b7, and queen to d1. And now this queen is in jeopardy because there would be no back rank mate now. So the queen moves to a2. But notice, we talked about this vulnerable focal point, b6. There's a rook, a bishop, and a knight. And it's only defended twice, once by the king. So Fischer goes ahead and takes on b6. Knight takes b6, rook takes b6 check, king c8, and now queen to f3. And the back rank mating threats are gone. Black plays queen takes c4, but in a lost position, that leaves a nice little tactic for white. I'll give you a couple of seconds to see if you can spot it. That's right. Queen to f8 check. It's a double attack. It's the king and this vulnerable rook on a3. Get that word out. King d7, queen a3. And Bobby Fischer won in this game against Grandmaster Bisguier in the 57 U.S. Championships. Hope you've enjoyed this game. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.